Welcome back to the Hey Brother podcast. I'm your host, Nick Clooney. Host of the Hey Brother podcast and founder of Crafter for More. Glad to be joining you for this episode. It's another First Thoughts with my brother Mitch, my actual biological brother Mitch. We sit down and discuss each week a previous interview that I've done earlier this week. So this week I interviewed one of our good friends, Riley, who's an ultimate Frisbee player, a pro ultimate Frisbee player. We talk a little bit about that. But we also discuss his vulnerability. Riley shares in a very vulnerable way in the podcast from earlier this week that I invite you to go listen to. But me and Mitch were both inspired by that, and we talk about that and how that inspired us to, invite other people into our mess. And that's what we want to share with you guys this week, me and Mitch's conversation. But as always, this is just our thoughts. Please join us in the comment section below with your thoughts. We want you guys to be a part of this conversation. And as always, you are so welcome, everyone who's listening to this podcast, to participate in the comments. We love to hear from you guys. So with that, I will roll the intro music and we'll get started with the podcast.
In today's world, Catholic men face countless challenges on the road to holiness. Addiction, anger, self-doubt, relationship struggles, and so much more. These battles can leave us stuck in mediocrity. But the truth is, we're made for more. The world needs good men. Welcome to the Hey Brother podcast, where we dive into these real struggles and share from our own experience as brothers and husbands and fathers. Together, we'll explore how to overcome life's challenges and become the men God created us to be. So grab a seat, brother, and remember, you're not alone.
We're recording. We're live. So we're talking about booze.
Did you try your little concoction there?
I did the brandy old fashioned.
Brandy old fashioned.
Yeah, it's tasty.
Yeah, I got a rum old fashioned.
Rum old fashioned.
Because we don't have any bourbon here,
Right.
which is quite the devastating thing to be in the season of Christmas still.
Yeah, I think I drank the last of my bourbon with Bobby. I got a bottle of Woodford Reserve for watching a friend's dog. I'm like, nah.
Does he need another dog sitter?
I'm like, I'm not a dog person. And then
All of a sudden, I like dogs a lot more.
Right. I'm like, maybe I can be a dog person. And dogs, some of the nicest dogs, they left me a bourbon. And I'm happy. So
That's funny. I want to make an old fashioned out of
Woodford.
I mean, it wouldn't be the most egregious thing.
Woodford's probably like middle.
Yeah, it's probably priced a little higher than what it is because of the brand,
Yeah.
But
it's not top shelf.
no. But normally when I make old fashions, I use Jim Beam or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Four Roses is really good too. But Four Roses regular is one of my favorite cocktail making bourbons.
Okay.
But
It's got a pretty
Four Roses small batch is my favorite sipping bourbon. But I'm not much of a bourbon fella.
just sipping. You'd rather have a cocktail
Yeah.
or beer.
Or a beer. I was big into the cocktails in 2020 during COVID.
Gotta take it on some hobby.
Yeah.
Hobby.
And then I had a couple of children and got into the beer game because it's a little easier. But dang, do I appreciate a good beer.
And not elevated, but evolved to the IPA tasting world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even past hazies. I think hazy IPAs are the gateway to
To other ones, to
to IPAs.
the double IPA.
Yeah, those are my favorite now. Double IPA. I look at.
You like Truth? Is that a?
I'm not a big fan of Truth.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah.
That one's Bobby's favorite beer.
Yeah, I know a lot of obviously a lot of people really like it, but
I brought it to his bachelor party, and I was one of 4 people who brought him a 6-pack of Truth.
and that's funny.
The original.
Yeah, no, my favorite one that I've had recently was Columbus Brew, Bodhi, Bodhi, Bodhi double IPA.
Not sponsored by Bodhi or Columbus Brew.
Not yet.
Yeah. It's like this is like a pretty
Yeah.
or not hoppy, but just like a true IPA.
It's a I don't know if that one's a double, but it's like imperial style or something. I don't know. It's good, but that's what kind of the thing I look for now in the IPAs that I know that I'm like I have a better chance of liking. What am I trying to say? The ones I find myself liking the most are like the ones that are 9% or more ABV,
Yeah.
and most of those that are that higher, the double IPAs.
Is the ABV go up because of like the length that it's?
I don't really know,
Okay, I'm surprised.
but
I would think your chemistry prowess would.
no, yeah, it's something super interesting.
Yeah.
That's a funny story. We went to the Bourbon Trail for spring break one year, and part of it was like there was a part where you like sat in like a little theater and you're like sitting on like old like half bourbon barrels, and they would close the lights and put a little like a movie on about how they might make it, and like I'm like eating it up. I'm like, this is fantastic, and then it's over, and I look at my friends and they're all asleep.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, this is like what I'm studying right now.
Yeah, because you're so interested in the
Yeah,
how the chemical makeup and everything like that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh man, bourbon, which is a great segue to talking about right.
Yeah.
We were actually drinking. So we sat down and we drank the cow beer. I can't think of the name of it.
Spotted Cow.
Spotted Cow, the Wisconsin beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like, you want like anything? Like we're sitting down to do the podcast. He's like, you want anything to drink? I got water.
I got water
Yeah,
and
I
beer.
got water. No, he's just like, I got water. I was like, well,
He's gonna have to work on that for that dinner party.
he didn't have high expectations. He's like, it's not gonna be a good dinner party, but I'm gonna have a dinner party.
Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, it was a little slow. It was like, do you want anything to drink? I was like, oh yeah, something to drink sounds good. He's like, well, I got water. And he's like, well, wait a minute, I got a couple beers. That was only it. I only had a Spotted Cow.
That's interesting that he only had Spotted Cow.
Yeah. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
So I've had it before.
I've had it before. I think it's half the fun of it is saying you have Spotted Cow. And we're not in Wisconsin where it's only available.
The exclusivity of it.
Yeah.
It's like having what's the bourbon that Buffalo Trace, right?
Yeah.
The exclusivity of it. Yeah, that was a fun conversation with Riley. It's probably the most tired I was doing interview. I was like, I'm hungry. I just want to like go to sleep, but it was good. Like anytime you're around Riley, you can't help but like getting livened up. He's like a really good energy.
He's. I'm not convinced he's not a dog.
Got that spirit. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
Chase a frisbee any day.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's a professional frisbee player. I haven't done my intro for him yet. This is so to break the fourth wall here for a second. I still need to do my intro for Riley's episode. And I think that's what I'm gonna do is announce him as a professional.
The professional frisbee.
Professional frisbee
Frisbeer?
Yeah, because he was a professional. He said semi-pro, but I'm like, I don't think that's right. Like, 'cause I think like.
Does he get paid? I think that's the difference, right?
Is it?
If you like,
he played for the Detroit Mechanics,
right?
And they're in the same league as the Alley Cats, and I think that's as big as it gets. I don't think it's bigger than that. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. If someone says they're a professional, I assume they get paid. If they tell me they're semi-pro, then I assume they don't get paid.
He got paid very little when he was playing for the Mechanics.
Okay.
Still impressive. Like.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Especially since he's like probably like half a foot shorter than the average height, like for frisbee players.
Really? Yeah.
They're just lanky dudes. They're like
they're
like your height, but like
100 pounds less.
Yeah, like just like super, not like jacked or ripped, like almost like cross country runners, right? Just
Yeah.
super lanky, like I don't know, or like Slender Man, right? Like
Yeah.
they's got like arms for days.
That makes sense because my wife played in indoor league in Indy for a couple years, and one of the guys on her team, he was that, and they would do a vertical stack, and their play would be just he would be the top guy. So like normally on a stack, the bottom person does like a cut, and then they come down, cut, come down, cut, come down, cut, and then you run to the top of the stack and get back in line.
Yeah.
Their play was their handler would switch it over to the other handler, and he would be at the top of the stack, and he'd just go long. And he's just like, guys, I'm a foot taller than the guy guarding me, and I can jump like 74 inches or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, but it's impressive. Riley, he's a athletic dude and good man, like just like through and through. I think. I mean, he was very like vulnerable through the whole interview that I was doing with him, and I thought, and I just appreciated that. Like, I think it's
Right.
the essence of the Hey Brother podcast is like vulnerability.
Yeah, and this I want to address the audience here real quick, because here's the thing, and this is what Riley's interview made me think of. You aren't special. There is nothing unique or interesting about you. That's not true, but the idea, like the message is for vulnerability. Like literally, someone's going through the same thing that you are, and that's one of the great things about brotherhood is that, like, you know, odds are, no matter who it is you're talking to, that dude has gone through a similar thing. And if he hasn't, he knows someone that has.
Yeah.
And like, so it's just a testament to being vulnerable in like small groups.
Yeah.
Because like, you're really not that interesting of a person.
Well, that's an interesting thing to say, because it's like, obviously, like, it's kind of like a facetious comment. Like, obviously, there's everything. We're all unique individuals, and that makes us interesting. But like, what you're saying is like really true to what we talked about in the program. Dr. Greg hit on quite a bit when I was going through the CP MAP program at Catholic Psych about how sin's boring, right? Sin is boring. There's like the devil only knows so many ways to like mess with us, and that's like the same thing that you're saying with like being vulnerable, right? It's boring, because there is somebody else who's probably struggling with the same sin, if not the exact same way you are, like very closely, right? Like the only difference is that you are two different individuals, but it's like there is like the fact that like, what does he use to tempt us? Lust, or pride, or greed, or whatever the case may be.
That was one other thing I was thinking about too, is that like there are three things certain in life, right? Death, taxes, and being exposed to porn way too early in your life.
That's a sad reality.
Yeah,
because it's like something that we live with in today's world. That
it made me think of that Riley, because like, if someone was to not be exposed to it, it would have been him, right? Because he didn't go to like public school.
Yeah.
He did online high school. He was raised in a like Christian first family.
Right.
And like,
by all means, should have been sheltered.
If there was a firewall, that would have been it, right?
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. That speaks to like the crazy world that we live in, and like the fact that it's out there everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And
not just like not just like seeking out like hardcore porn, but like even the things that like the standards that are just being shattered today that would have been called porn like 80 years ago.
The Notebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
gosh, I was just thinking of like, there was a commercial the other day. It was like maybe Levi's commercial, like jeans. and like this girl goes into the laundromat and like takes her pants off, throws them in the wash,
Yeah.
and like 10 years ago they would have done that same thing, but like they would have done like a top cut of her like taking her pants off, and then
It wasn't a top cut.
and then they go back to it and it's like her in her underwear now. Like
Yeah.
no, but like yeah, they just showed her like
Showed-
undressing, and like
Wow.
I'm like, even like the top cut thing is like probably not great, but like that was like, I don't know. It was like football, right? Like children are watching this.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
it's like-
a whole nother thing.
Yeah. That's what I mean about being exposed to it so early on. Like,
Yeah. Because it's everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah. That's fair. The football thing triggered like something where Renee and I always like try to turn off the TV or shut the laptop when we're watching football and the commercials come on, because like you don't know what's gonna come up. And like literally as I shutting down the laptop this last Sunday watching the Colts game, which was such a bummer, like, and I'm like, I don't even know I'm watching this. But like
wait, was that the one that they got knocked out on, or the
Jags game, the one that didn't matter.
the one that didn't matter?
That went into overtime. I'm like, this is like Colts going through purgatory right now. Like the game doesn't matter and it goes into overtime. Like, what the heck?
The temporal punishment.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez Louise. But I was like closing the laptop and an R-rated commercial was coming on, like about a zombie, like thriller movie where the dad becomes a zombie. And I'm like, thank God, like my 4-year-old son didn't see that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's already got oldest child like problems. Freaks out about things. Like we're working on that, but like if he would have saw that, that would have been traumatic. Like
Yeah.
truly traumatic. And like that's just the horror aspect of it, but like to the point of like, you know, sexual stuff being out there, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And like social media is the worst place for it. Like, well, maybe sports websites, you know, like they know their demographic.
Yeah,
the
sure.
ad section is like filled
Targeting ads. Yeah.
with everything, but it's everywhere. And I think like that's you know, something we talked about last conversation about like setting high expectations. I think we set that high expectation of like we should be able to figure it out. We should have never fallen into looking
Yeah.
at XYZ as men, when it's like, well, really the world's stacked against us.
Yeah.
like no one knows how to navigate this. Like it's like you know, no one gave us a guide to navigate a mobile porn theater in our pocket. Right? Like
How did our parents not have the foresight? Maybe it's because like they were just, particularly like, our generation's dads, like were wanting to like not admit things to themselves. But like,
yeah.
I don't know. As I'm moving on, the first thing that I'm thinking about for like my kids now, not like now, but like as they're growing up, if I have like an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old, it's just like, if I give them something, like how can they access porn on this and how I'm going to stop it? You know, like there should have been foresight with smartphones, right? Like it's not, or like iPods. It wasn't that hard to, I don't know, maybe this is a hindsight thing, but
I feel like it is to some degree, like, because like even like TVs, right? Like there should have been foresight with TVs. There should have been, you know, like, where's the buck stop?
Right, exactly. Like if a dad, like, oh, when I was 12, I was trying to find dirty magazines.
Yeah.
Oh, here's an iPod. That's a dirty magazine, right? Like, you should have been able to connect the dots. That's what that could be used for.
Do you think it's an inability to connect the dots, or do you think it's like an inability to talk about the topic?
The latter for sure.
Or it's like we were talking.
Not willing to admit to themselves that like that's what it is.
Yeah. Like to bring in last conversation again, right? Sex is everything.
Yeah.
And like I don't think we talk about it enough. Like I started, this is my third podcast that I've I had one podcast and then like maybe half a podcast. I was going to start another podcast called Sex and Money. And that was going to be with me and a financial coach, Catholic financial coach here in the Dayton area. Because I'm like, those are the two things that like we don't talk about, but we should. Like especially as married people, like Like, if you're not talking about sex and you're not talking about money, like, you should do a check. Like those are two things that are like important topics that affect a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like there's a taboo with both, right? Like to not talk about those things, just like politics at family parties and stuff like that. But going back to like how do dads relate to their kids, right? It should be a normalized thing. Like I want to normalize that. Like I want to talk to my kids about like
Yeah.
the importance of sex, the beauty of sex, like
Right.
the goodness like that is.
Yeah. And that, I guess maybe that's what I'm thinking about too, of like why they might not do that is because if you don't know the truth about it, then it's really hard to
actually talk about it.
Yeah. Talk about it.
Because you're buried in your own shame.
Yeah, right. If you've been looking at porn for 30 years,
Right.
like it's not necessarily fair, right?
Yeah.
In your head to talk to your son about it.
And you can go about it a couple ways too. I've known guys who don't like get buried in the shame, but they just like joke about it, right? Like, and it's like, well, that's not any helpful.
You should be ashamed of that. Like, not like the feeling of shame, but like
ashamed of joking about it.
Yeah.
I'm like normalizing porn, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that's like it made me pissed off when I heard a guy talk about it. Like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna like teach my kids to watch the good porn. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, like there is no such thing. Like, I don't know. I get angry when I think about it.
There's like a big like personality that had that stance. Was it
Like a YouTube personality?
No. It wasn't Peterson, was it?
Oh, like an interview with Matt Fradd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was yeah. Was it Jordan Peterson?
No, it wasn't Peterson. Peterson had a hard like core. He had a hardcore stance of like he's like if you're watching porn, just stop.
Okay.
Like he's like get a hold of yourself. Like be a man. Like stop. Like
Yeah.
And like it was good. Like
Right.
I understand where he's getting at. I'm like could probably use a little more empathy here, but
Yeah, but I don't know. Did you jump into a freezing cold lake yet? Because
Francis, right? Is that St. Francis, or is that a different saint? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah. Is it St. Francis? I don't know, but one of the saints. Yeah. Just like to fight off temptation, he jumped naked into an icy cold pond.
Yeah. I've not done that yet.
No. Yeah.
I've taken an icy cold shower.
Yeah. But like that's the point. Like that Peterson, I guess, is making is just like people don't feel sorry for themselves too much, and it's just like I'm doing everything you can, and it's just like, are you? And that's his point. But the other fella, I don't know.
It was like a rabbi, I believe, like a Jewish rabbi. I can't think of his name.
He was
But
unironically saying that a little bit of porn's good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
He's like talking about the mismatch of like sex drives, and like Peterson talks about that too. And his takes the same like just stop watching porn. It's like it sucks to suck. It's like your wife's gonna want to have sex one time a week. You're gonna want to have sex every day of the week. like somebody's gonna win those conversations. And he's like, and so like the guy, I can't think of his name at all, but he was talking about like in a way to honor your bride, or like
You relieve the tension,
something to that effect.
something stupid.
And it's like this guy has a red TOB. He doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Smart dude. I think he's got a huge following, and like I'm sure he's right about 90% of the things he talks about. But
He's not right about that.
Yeah, right. Anyway, going back to Riley, was there anything like that struck you from, because that was obviously like his vulnerability in the interview was great. Was there anything else that kind of
his idea of a life verse? Yeah, I have the Bible quote right here that he talked about. His life verse was from 2 Corinthians 12, verses 9 and 10, to my understanding at least. It goes, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, For power is made perfect in weakness, so I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong.
Yeah.
And that was like a really cool quote to think about. But I also like just the idea of a life verse. When he said that, I know what mine is. I didn't like think about it, but I know what it is now. Do you have one?
I honestly didn't think about it. I was pretty like in the moment with Riley, just like, oh, interesting, a life verse. Like, if I think about it for a minute here, I might be able to.
Yeah, mine came from a
Taylor Swift concert.
yeah, Taylor Swift concert. There's a blank space on my long list of ex-lovers.
Yes.
I'll write your name.
Boom. Like,
Life verse.
I think mine would probably be a JP2 quote, like the like, oh, it's only Jesus that satisfy the deepest longing of your hearts. Like, it goes on to be like, don't be grounded down by mediocrity. Like, you were made for greatness.
Yeah, mine's similar. It's from Steubenville Youth Conference. It was like the theme of the weekend. It was John 10:10. I came so that they might have life and have it more abundantly. And like that's been my like go-to. Like I was talking about last time about my college experience, like how that was when I like chose to like live the faith as my identity. But that youth conference was that like that the seed of why I wanted to seek it out, you know, when I got to be on my own.
Yeah.
It was because like there's something to this, like people that have like if God is real and has a plan for my life, it's because he wants it to be full of abundance and live it to the fullness. Like the fullness of life is living for Christ and believing in him.
Yeah. 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 And that's like, as a man, we want the best. Sometimes we want it to be burping in the mic over there.
Yeah,
guys.
don't worry about it.
We want the best because it's like, you know, like we're designed for the best. Like God wants the absolute best for us. And I think it's like easy to misconstrue that with like no pain, no suffering, right? There's actually going to be quite a bit of pain and suffering, but life's going to be
sufficient suffering, right?
Sufficient suffering. The principle of sufficient suffering. I haven't talked about that on this podcast yet, I don't think, but it's a good principle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's what we're designed for, like a life abundant. And like, that's like a challenge to us, me and you, and then anyone who's listening to this. Like, if we're not living life to abundance, like what's missing? Like, there's more. There's something more to our life. It's not just pain. It's not just misery. It's not just doom scrolling on YouTube, or Facebook, or I don't know where you doom scroll. Somebody talked about doom scrolling recently, but
Yeah.
it's like, that's not it. It's not just life. Isn't just those things. It's, you know, there's more to it.
Yeah. But it's also, that is it too, a little bit. Like there's more to it. I'm just thinking like part of like who we are is our sufferings and like,
but glorified sufferings, right? Like, like Christ keeps his wounds, right? Like part of his resurrected body is the sufferings.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, it's resurrection through the suffering. It's not just suffering for suffering's sake.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's like working through those wounds and those sufferings is like makes you who you are. So that like that's where the more lies, not just like living in that. It's
because we don't want to be preaching the prosperity gospel here.
Yeah.
Like where it's just gone.
Right.
But it's like through the doorway of crucifixion, do we find life, right?
Yeah.
which is like something we have to remind ourselves of daily.
Yeah.
If not moment, but to moment, right? Like
The abundance that Christ brings you to is found by embracing the sufferings, taking up your cross, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anything else like from Riley's talk interview that you really want to hit on, because we're wrapping up on time pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I like what he was closing with, like his dinner party. Circling back to that,
Yeah. Part of me was like, well, dinner party. That caught me out of left field a little bit.
yeah, no, but I thought it was super great, and like what he was saying to like fight that perfectionist mindset is that that's like a perfect way to do it, and like that was an attitude I took on pretty early on. Is that like when you invite people over, like it doesn't matter that you're like
Yeah.
what your like what's your house like looks like, right? And you want to invite people into your mess, and like I think the dinner party is a beautiful idea because you invite in vulnerability to people, because like like people are gonna like like judge you, like not on purpose, but like they're gonna form opinions on you on how it goes. um but like being acceptable and vulnerable to that, but then also like if you invite people over, like you don't have to worry about like what everything looks like. um well, you shouldn't at least when you're hosting, because part of like who you are is your mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a beautiful analogy towards diving into a relationship with like Jesus, is that like you have to invite him into the mess of your life.
Yeah.
You don't tidy up for when he comes through the door, because like it's not you, like you're putting on a facade if you don't.
Yeah.
And like I've known about that analogy for a long time, but like to like see him like actually like host a dinner party to like live that out, it's like I don't know, like it's
good.
more than an analogy, you know what I mean? Like
That's
it's
actually living it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And
you're practicing what that actually feels like, but like on a real tangible level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy to like look at your prayer life and like project all the other kind of, so our first instances of God are mom and dad, right? Those are our first authority figures. So that's our first kind of template of who is God, right?
Yeah.
And thank God we've learned differently, right? Because mom and dad are imperfect. Our mom and dad, anyone's mom and dad, imperfect. And thank God we learned differently, because it's like, uh, you know, God is so much more gentle, patient, loving than what we could ever imagine. And so, like what you're talking about with Riley, right, and talking about inviting God into that woundedness, into that mess, it's like, yeah, that's what we need, is to not put up this facade that we would for mom or dad, or that we would for somebody else.
Yeah.
But to actually let that facade fall and be authentically ourselves in all of it, in the mess, in the good things and in the bad things.
Right, but like even like on a real like relationship level, like for like an actual dinner party, like having like guests over and like not having everything perfect, like it actually, if the guests are good guests, they will like actually they'll learn more about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and that's like the essence of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's why it's like Pope Francis has this great quote. I don't know what your take on Pope Francis is. We really haven't talked about the Pope too much, which is probably a good thing. But like anyone's take on like who Pope on Pope Francis. But he had this really great quote of like, I think he's talking about marriage specifically, but it's like this apprenticeship of heaven. And you could say any relationship is this apprenticeship of heaven. It's
Interesting.
learning to be in relationship. And so like the dinner party is like that level of vulnerability invites a great amount of relationship.
Yeah.
And you're training yourself in relationship essentially through that dinner party. Through any act of vulnerability, you're training yourself in this ability to be seen.
Yeah.
Which is so profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We part of SPO, being a part of that was like uh hosting well was like a skill
Mhm.
they taught you,
Okay.
because like one time a week we had open dinner where we would have guests come to dinner, and that was through the whole year.
You
So
have to
like,
host them. Yeah.
yeah, and then you have to cook that dinner probably like 2 or 3 times a semester too, because like the cooks just rotated, and whoever happened to be that night, you're just hosting. So
Yeah. So you develop the skill of your dog.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just develop it, like it just happens.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's good. Well, I think there's a really good challenge for each of us in looking at Riley's life, um, and like being open to like inviting people into the mess, inviting people, just like extending the invite and just be like, yeah, I want you to see it all. This is who I am.
yeah,
And I think that's like a good place to kind of leave things off and just like, let ourselves be challenged by that. Let everyone who's listening be challenged by that. And as always, like this is like just me and Mitch's thoughts. We would love for you guys to chime in on the conversation down in the comment section. Send us an email at nick@craftingformore.com. If it's about the podcast, I'll include Mitch on it. But we really want to hear you guys. Like this is what this podcast is about: is inviting people into brotherhood. Me and Mitch experience this brotherhood as we do as biological brothers, but also as spiritual brothers. And that's what you guys are too. And we would love to be in that conversation with you. So if you have any comments, send them below. And we'll catch you guys next time. God bless.